His family kept saying, "We miss your ex. She was so much better for our son." I didn't break up with him because I stopped loving him. I broke up with him because I was tired of competing with a woman who wasn't even in the room anymore. At Thanksgiving dinner, his mother smiled at me across the table, carving the turkey with slow, deliberate movements, and said, almost nostalgically, "You know who was so good at this? His ex. She had such a steady hand." I remember freezing with a fork still in my fingers. I hadn't even touched the knife yet. Around that table sat people who were supposed to become my family one day. Instead, they talked about another woman as if she were a ghost they refused to let go of. A woman who had dated my boyfriend for 4 years before me. A woman who, according to them, walked on water and cured cancer in her spare time. And the worst part? My boyfriend just sat there, silent, apologetic eyes, no words. That was the pattern. Not just that night. Every visit, every holiday, every casual comment that wasn't casual at all. Her career was better, her taste was better, her gifts were better, her car was better, she was better. And I was the woman sitting in her place. I smiled. I swallowed it. I told myself I was being mature, understanding, patient. I told myself that 18 months together had to mean something. But patience starts to feel a lot like self-betrayal when no one ever chooses you out loud. The night I finally snapped wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no slammed doors. Just a quiet moment in our kitchen, steam rising from a kettle, when I realized something chillingly simple. He was never going to defend me. Not against his mother, not against his father, not against his brother, not against the memory of the woman they loved more than the one standing right in front of them. So I gave him a choice. Not an ultimatum, a boundary. Either he shut it down, clearly, firmly, or I walked away. He called me unreasonable. And in that moment, I understood exactly where I ranked. I smiled again. Calm this time, clear. And I told him to go back to her. I just didn't expect him to actually try. And I definitely didn't expect what happened after she refused to take him back. That's when the calls started. The guilt, the accusations, the desperation. That's when everyone suddenly needed me. And that's when I learned something no one ever teaches you about love. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave quietly and let people live with the consequences of never choosing you. I remember the first time I met him as if it were yesterday. It wasn't some grand, cinematic moment. No dramatic slow motion or spontaneous spark. Just a simple introduction, a friendly conversation between mutual friends at a gathering. But there was something about him, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Maybe it was the way he listened, really listened, as if he was present in every word. Or maybe it was his laugh, the way it echoed in the room, warm and genuine. We hit it off almost immediately. I had never been one to believe in love at first sight, but with him, everything felt so effortless. We didn't need to force conversation. There was always something to talk about, whether it was about the little things or the deeper stuff. It felt like a natural connection, something rare and precious. After a few months, we made the decision to move in together. It wasn't rushed. It just felt like the right next step. He was steady, dependable, a solid presence in my life. My friends and family liked him, which was always a bonus. He was a gentleman, respectful, easy to be around. I couldn't remember the last time I felt so comfortable with someone. It was easy to imagine a future with him, a home, a life. It was easy to imagine building something together. But then came the family visits. His family lived about 2 hours away, so we only saw them on the weekends, maybe once a month. I had always heard about them before I met them. His mother, his father, his younger brother, they all seemed like the picture-perfect family, warm and welcoming, the kind of people who seemed to have it all together. It was clear that family meant a lot to him, and I liked that. I liked that he valued those bonds, that connection. I liked that he respected his parents, and that he had such a tight-knit group. At first, everything was fine. They were nice to me, polite, maybe a little distant at times, but nothing that stood out. I brushed it off. Maybe they were just warming up to me. It was only natural to feel a bit of hesitance at first. But as the visits continued, something started to nag at me. It was subtle at first. Comments here and there, usually small things, almost innocent. His mother would ask, "Do you think you'll be as good a cook as she was?" She, being his ex. His father would ask, "What's your career plan?" She was already well established by the time she was your age. And then his younger brother, home from college, would make small talk. "You don't drive a Tesla?" She always did. It wasn't just once. It was every visit, every family gathering, every conversation. And yet, it wasn't until the Thanksgiving dinner that I realized just how deep it ran. I was carving the turkey when his mother made the first comment about her. The way she said it, it wasn't just nostalgia, it was a hint of longing, a sense of loss. His ex was always so steady with this. She had such a steady hand. I hadn't even picked up the knife yet. I just stood there, frozen, trying to suppress the sting of comparison. It was as though she were still here, sitting at that table with us. His father jumped in, talking about career paths, how ambitious his ex was. She was a lawyer, after all. She had already made partner by the age of 28. I was a civil engineer. Sure, I had a good job, a stable future, but I was nowhere near partner at a firm. His younger brother added his piece in his usual cocky tone. So, what do you drive? A Honda Accord? He chuckled, but the judgment was clear. She had a Tesla. And there I was, holding my fork, feeling the weight of their eyes, their subtle comparisons, their praises for someone who wasn't even there. I looked across the table at my boyfriend. I saw the apologetic glances he shot my way, but no words, no defense, no support. He didn't step in. He didn't say anything. He just let me sit there as they compared me to a ghost, an ex who had already moved on, someone who had already built a life with him, someone who apparently was better than me in every possible way. That was when the first crack formed, when the questions began to stir in the back of my mind, the doubts I couldn't ignore anymore. Why was I still here, in a relationship with someone who never defended me? Why was I putting up with this, being compared to someone I couldn't compete with? And why was he so silent? The truth was, I didn't have answers. But that night, I started to realize that maybe this wasn't just a family thing. Maybe, deep down, he was still hung up on her. The evening had started like any other. He had been distant all week, wrapped up in his work, barely speaking beyond the pleasantries. I was used to it by now, the silence, the cold distance that seemed to grow between us with every passing day. But that night, something felt different. There was a heaviness in the air, a tension that neither of us could ignore. It was our anniversary, 2 years together, and yet it felt like I was walking on eggshells, unsure of what might break the fragile quiet between us. I had planned the evening carefully, hoping to rekindle some of the connection we once had. A quiet dinner at home, just the two of us, to celebrate the time we had shared. I had even bought a gift, something thoughtful that I had saved up for months. It wasn't expensive, but it was meaningful, something that said I care, something that reflected the love I thought we still had. I waited for him to come home, a soft smile on my lips, nervous excitement building in my chest. But when the door clicked open and he stepped inside, my heart sank. He smelled of alcohol, a hint of tequila still lingering on his breath. I could see the faint trace of makeup on his collar, and my stomach twisted. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "How was your night?" He kicked off his shoes and slumped against the doorframe, a faint smile on his face. "It was good. Just had a few drinks with the guys." I stared at him for a moment, trying to read his face, but the expression was unreadable. "Did you enjoy yourself?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. He nodded. "Yeah, it was fun." "Fun enough to come home smelling like tequila?" I pressed, unable to hold back the frustration that had been building for months. "I thought we had plans tonight." His gaze faltered, and for a split second I saw something flicker in his eyes. It wasn't guilt, not exactly, but it was something close to it, something like a half-formed apology that never made it to his lips. "I forgot," he said, his voice lacking any real remorse. "I had already made plans with the guys before you texted me about dinner. We can do something tomorrow, okay?" Tomorrow. The word stung more than it should have. It was always tomorrow, wasn't it? Always the promise of something better later. But tonight had been the night I'd hoped would matter. I felt a coldness seep into my chest, a feeling of rejection so deep that it took my breath away. I had planned, I had hoped, I had tried, and he didn't even remember. He hadn't even tried to make it special for us. I tried to keep my voice level. "So, that's it? You forget our anniversary and I'm supposed to just accept it?" He turned toward the kitchen, grabbing a bottle of water from the counter, clearly trying to avoid the conversation. "Look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to be like this. I just didn't think it was that big of a deal." I felt the anger rising in me, the familiar feeling of being invisible, of being second place to everything and everyone else in his life. I wasn't asking for grand gestures, but a little effort would have been nice, a little acknowledgement that I existed beyond the space I occupied in his world. I couldn't take it anymore. "Is she still on your mind?" I blurted out before I could stop myself. He froze, his back still turned to me, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice tight. "You know exactly what I'm talking about." I took a deep breath, trying to hold back the rush of emotions that threatened to spill over. "Your ex. She's still here. In every conversation, every comment, every glance you give her pictures on your phone." He turned around slowly, his face hardening. "I don't know why you're bringing this up now. I told you before, she's in the past." "No, she's not," I shot back, my voice trembling with frustration. "She's in the present every time we talk, every time we see your family. She's the shadow that's hanging over everything we do, and I'm tired of being compared to her. I'm tired of being treated like I'm just filling a space until you figure out how to move on from her." His eyes narrowed. "You're being overdramatic. You know I care about you." "Then why do you let your family treat me like I'm nothing compared to her?" I demanded. "Why do you let them say she was better than me? Why do you let them tear me down every time we see them?" The silence that followed felt thick, suffocating. For the first time in a long time, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, something that resembled guilt, but also something else. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. "Look," he said, his voice low and strained, "I can't change how my family feels, but I can't keep doing this either. I can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's not. I don't know how to fix this." I took a step back, the realization hitting me like a wave. This wasn't just about his family, it was about him, too. He had never fully let go of her, and I wasn't going to be the one left waiting around, hoping for something that would never come. "I think I need a break," I said quietly, my voice shaky with the weight of what I was about to say. "I think I need to figure out if this is even worth fighting for anymore." He stared at me, his face blank, but there was a sharp edge in his eyes now. "So, you're just going to leave?" "I don't know if I'm leaving yet," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't stay in this limbo. I can't keep pretending everything's okay when you're still holding on to her." And with that, the fragile thread that had been holding us together snapped. The words hung in the air between us like a heavy mist. I stood there trembling, not from fear, but from the sudden clarity of my own decision. It was as if a weight had lifted, but a new one had settled in its place. The reality of what I had just said, of what I was about to do, hit me all at once. He didn't speak right away. For a long, agonizing moment, the only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall and the hum of the refrigerator. I could feel his eyes on me, but I couldn't bring myself to meet them. I didn't want to see the disappointment, the confusion, the guilt. I had spent so long waiting for him to see what was happening, to acknowledge the emotional weight I carried, but it had never come. And now, standing on the precipice of what could be the end, I had never felt more certain that I was doing the right thing. "I didn't think it was this bad," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. It was the first time in weeks that he had spoken with any kind of vulnerability. "I didn't think it was this bad either," I replied, my throat tight. I didn't want to cry, didn't want to give him that power. But the tears were there, threatening to spill over, threatening to betray me in the most raw way. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing in small, anxious circles. "You know I never meant to hurt you, right?" His voice wavered, the words desperate. I've just been trying to make this work, trying to hold things together. I didn't realize how bad things had gotten." "I'm not the one who has to realize it," I said, my voice firmer now, though my heart was pounding in my chest. "I'm the one who's been hurt. I'm the one who's been here, watching you choose your ex and your family over me, watching them talk about her like she's still the one. I'm tired of being second place, tired of being invisible. I've given everything I have to this relationship, and I don't know what's left to give." He stopped pacing and turned to face me, his eyes filled with something that could have been regret, but I wasn't sure anymore. "You've always been enough," he said, his voice pleading. "I never meant for it to be like this." But the truth was, it was like this. And I wasn't sure I could stay and wait for him to realize that I wasn't a backup plan, that I wasn't the one who should be fighting for his attention and affection. I wasn't the one who should have to beg for him to see me, to make me feel like I belonged. "Do you love me?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. It wasn't what I had planned to ask, but it was the only question that mattered now. He hesitated, the air between us thick with unspoken words. "Of course. I love you," he said. But there was something in his voice that didn't match his words. It felt too rehearsed, too automatic. "I just don't know how to make everything work with my family. They just don't understand." And right there, in that moment, I understood the painful truth. He didn't love me the way I needed to be loved. Not enough to stand up to his family. Not enough to choose me over the memory of a woman who had long since moved on. His eyes searched mine, as if looking for some sign, some clue that I would take it all back. "I don't want to lose you," he said softly, stepping closer, but I took a step back. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "You've already lost me. I can't keep pretending. You've spent months comparing me to her. You've let your family do it. You've let me be second to someone who's not even part of your life anymore. How am I supposed to keep giving when you're still holding on to her?" The silence that followed was suffocating. He didn't move, didn't speak. It was as though everything had come to a standstill, and neither of us knew what to do next. I turned toward the door, my hand on the handle. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. I knew it was going to hurt, but I couldn't stay another second in this place waiting for him to choose me. I had waited long enough. "I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice breaking. "I can't wait for you to figure out if I'm enough for you. If you can't see it now, then I'm not going to keep proving it." I opened the door and walked out. The apartment that had once been home suddenly felt like a prison, and as I stepped out into the hallway, a deep sense of finality settled in. I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that came with resolution, but with release. The weight I had been carrying for so long, trying to make everything work, had finally been lifted. And as I stepped into the elevator, leaving the past behind me, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. I was enough. I had always been enough. And I didn't need anyone else to define that for me. I didn't expect him to call. I didn't expect him to reach out at all after I left. I figured I had made myself clear, and honestly, the thought of hearing his voice again made my stomach churn. But still, when my phone rang the next day and I saw his name on the screen, a wave of dread washed over me. I ignored it the first time, then again. But as the missed calls piled up, something inside me, something stubborn, finally gave in. "Hello?" I answered, my voice thin, controlled. "Please, just let me explain," he said, his tone a mix of desperation and guilt. "I don't know what to say, but I can't just let you walk away like this." I could hear the anguish in his voice, but I had no more words of comfort left for him. "What's there to explain? You made your choice." "I never meant to hurt you," he said quickly, his voice cracking. I don't know how to fix things with my family. You have to understand that they've always been so involved in my life, and they don't get it. They don't understand us. They just keep bringing her up, and I've never known how to push back." His voice was trembling now, as if he was searching for something in my silence. "I can't fix everything with them, but I need you to understand that I don't want to lose you." I took a breath, steadying myself, but inside I was shaking. "You're not losing me because of them. You're losing me because of you," I replied, my words a quiet storm. "You've never chosen me. You've never defended me. You've never stood up for me, and your silence, it speaks louder than any apology." "I'm sorry," he said again, his words rushed, panicked. "Please, don't leave me. I'll talk to them, I swear. I'll set boundaries. I'll make them stop comparing you to her. Just don't walk away. We can figure this out together." His pleas hung in the air, heavy with promise. But something inside me shifted, something deep and undeniable. I had already given everything I had, and what did I have in return? His silence, his hesitation, his inability to choose me. He was offering me more of the same, and I wasn't willing to settle for that. "You don't get it," I said softly, more to myself than to him. "I'm not asking you to choose between me and your family. I'm asking you to choose me. Not once, but every day, and you haven't, not even once." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing, but it wasn't the deep, steady breath of someone who had finally understood. It was a breath of someone who was still lost, still trying to make sense of something that wasn't hard to understand at all. "Maybe I can try harder," he said, but the words sounded empty, like a promise made to ease his own guilt rather than an acknowledgement of the damage done. "No," I replied firmly. "I don't need you to try harder. I need you to show up for me. But you can't even do that." Another silence fell between us. The weight of my words hung like an anchor around us both, pulling us further apart. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You'll never be able to fix this. Not with me. Not with us." He let out a sharp breath, as if to say something, but the words didn't come. He just let me go. I hung up the phone, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the absence of him like a breath of fresh air. There was no rush of anger or sadness, just a quiet relief that I hadn't let myself feel before. It wasn't over yet, but this moment, the decision I had made, the strength I had found, felt like the first real step I had taken in a long time. I didn't want to look back, but I knew he wasn't going to let go that easily, and that's when the escalation began. The next few days were a whirlwind of texts, calls, and messages from his family. His mother called first, her voice sweet and pleading. "You have to understand, honey. He's been struggling with this. He doesn't know how to talk to you about it. He's never had to stand up to his family before, but he's trying. Please don't give up on him." I listened to her words, but they felt hollow. I wasn't giving up on him. I was giving up on someone who couldn't even fight for me. He had chosen the path of least resistance for so long that he didn't even know how to stand up for the one person who needed it most. Then came his father's call. "We don't appreciate how you've handled this," he said in a low, stern voice. "You've been unfair to him. You need to fix this and come back. He's not the problem. You're being unreasonable." It was clear now. This wasn't just about him. His family, their expectations, their comparisons, they were all part of the same toxic narrative that I couldn't escape. They wanted me to fit into their version of what was right, what was acceptable, and I wasn't going to be that woman. The last call came from his brother. "Look, I know things have been rough, but I think you should reconsider. You're making a huge mistake. You don't want to throw everything away over something this small." This small? I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. This wasn't small. This wasn't a little argument over trivial things. This was about my self-worth, my place in this world, and no one, not even him, was going to make me feel small for wanting to be treated with respect. But I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I was done fighting for something that wasn't worth fighting for anymore. That's when the silence set in. The silence I had been waiting for, and it was deafening. The silence that followed his family's attempts to reach out was suffocating. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was heavy, thick with unspoken words, unresolved tension, and regret. I had thought that walking away would bring clarity, that I'd feel empowered. And for a while, I did. But then the isolation settled in. I was alone, truly alone, for the first time in a long while. And it wasn't the kind of solitude that brings peace. It was the kind that gnaws at you, that makes you question everything. I had spent so long trying to convince myself that I had done the right thing. But when the days turned into weeks, and I still didn't hear from him, the doubts started creeping in. Had I been too harsh? Had I made a mistake? I kept telling myself no, but the emptiness inside only seemed to grow. It wasn't until the night I saw him at a coffee shop that the full weight of what I had done hit me. I was sitting at the counter, trying to get some work done, when I looked up and saw him across the room. My heart skipped a beat, and before I could stop myself, my eyes locked onto his. He hadn't seen me yet, but I could tell from his posture that he was distracted. He was with someone, another woman. A surge of panic flooded my chest as I tried to look away, but I couldn't. I couldn't stop watching, couldn't stop seeing. The woman he was with was laughing at something he had said, her hand resting lightly on his arm. It was casual, easy, and in that moment, I felt like I had been punched in the gut. It wasn't just seeing him with someone else. It was the realization that, despite everything, despite the pain, the silence, the abandonment, he had moved on, and I hadn't even been worth the effort to fight for. I stood up to leave, but my legs were shaking, my thoughts swirling in a mess of confusion and anger. I barely made it to the door before he turned around and saw me. For a moment, his face flickered with something I couldn't quite identify. Surprise, guilt, maybe even shame. But he didn't say anything. He just stood there, his eyes following me as I walked out of the cafe. The cold air hit me the moment I stepped outside, but I barely registered it. I was numb, my body moving on autopilot as I made my way to the car. The storm of emotions inside me was too loud for anything else to matter. I got in, slammed the door shut, and sat there, staring out at the street, trying to catch my breath. I had done the right thing, hadn't I? I had set the boundaries. I had walked away because I deserved more. I deserved someone who could love me without comparisons, without hesitation. But now, sitting there in the dark, alone, I wasn't so sure anymore. Had I really chosen myself, or had I simply run away because I was afraid to fight for what I wanted? I started the engine, but my hands were shaking too much to keep a steady grip on the wheel. I wasn't sure if I was even heading in the right direction. Everything felt blurred. My thoughts, my emotions, even the streetlights outside seemed to fade in and out. It wasn't just the sight of him with her. It was the hollow feeling inside, the realization that I had let so much go on for so long without standing up for myself. I had let his family, treat me like I wasn't enough. And in doing that, I had forgotten who I was. I drove for a while, not knowing where I was going, just needing to escape. Eventually, I ended up at the lake, parked in the dark, far away from everything. The water was still, the air crisp, and the quiet was deafening. But it was the kind of quiet that allowed me to think, to confront the truth that had been hiding behind all the noise of my life. I had always thought that walking away would feel like freedom, but instead it felt like a loss of a future I had imagined, a loss of trust, and most painfully, a loss of myself. I sat there for hours, feeling the weight of everything pressing in on me, but there was a flicker of something deep inside that finally broke through the darkness. I deserved better. I didn't deserve to be someone's second choice, someone's in the meantime. I didn't deserve to be constantly compared to a woman who had no place in my life anymore. I didn't deserve to be the one left alone, questioning if I was enough. And as much as it hurt, as much as the loneliness crushed me in that moment, I knew that the only way forward was to keep walking, even if it meant walking alone. The realization did not come all at once, but as the night stretched on, I knew I had to stop looking for validation from anyone else. I had to stop letting him and his family dictate my worth. I had to find that strength within myself. But it was hard. It was so much harder than I had imagined. The darkness didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. A painful, uncertain beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. The days that followed were heavy, weighed down with the remnants of everything that had happened. I tried to convince myself that I had done the right thing, leaving, setting boundaries, choosing to walk away from a relationship that had become nothing but a series of compromises. I kept telling myself that, but there were still moments when the quiet of my apartment seemed suffocating, when the echoes of his voice and the weight of his absence wrapped themselves around me like a thick fog. I'd thrown myself into work, into activities, anything to keep my mind occupied, but it didn't help. The loneliness crept in at the most unexpected times, while cooking dinner, or when I saw couples laughing on the street, or when I lay awake in the stillness of my bed, unable to shut off my mind. And then there were the nights when I felt myself reaching for my phone, wanting to call him, to hear his voice again, even just to tell him how much I had been hurting. But I stopped myself. I had already given him every chance I could, and it wasn't enough. It would never be enough until he chose me, until he saw me as more than just a placeholder, more than just the woman he could take for granted. But then, it happened. A message. It was his sister. Her name popped up on my screen, and for a moment I hesitated. I almost didn't open it. It felt like one more intrusion, one more reminder of everything I was trying to leave behind. But something made me click on the message. "Hey, can we talk?" the message read. "It's about him." I stood there for a moment, my thumb hovering over the phone. I could almost feel the weight of everything rushing back to me. His family, the comparisons, the silence. I almost blocked her. Almost. But something made me pause. Something deep down told me I needed to hear what she had to say. I reluctantly typed back, "What's going on?" "I know you've been through a lot," she replied almost immediately. "And I know it's not my place to interfere, but he's been struggling. He's been talking about you nonstop. He's sorry for everything that happened, and he doesn't know how to fix it. I think he wants to try again." I stared at the message, my heart pounding. I read it once, then twice, trying to make sense of the words. He wanted to try again? After everything? After weeks of silence? After the way he let me feel like I wasn't enough? I felt my pulse quicken, and a part of me, so desperate for closure, for resolution, wanted to believe it. But I knew better. This wasn't just about him. It was about me, too. I was angry. Angry that he had let me go. Angry that his family had never defended me, and most of all, angry that I had allowed myself to be treated like I wasn't enough. But I was also exhausted from the constant back and forth in my head. Could I really go back to him? Was it worth it? Or was this just another empty promise, another chance for him to make me feel like I was always going to come second? I didn't respond right away. I needed space to think, to process everything. But the next day, I saw him. I didn't plan it. I wasn't looking for him. But there he was, standing outside the cafe where I usually went to clear my head. He looked different, more tired, more worn down, as if the weight of everything had finally caught up to him. He saw me almost immediately, and there was a flicker of something in his eyes, hope, regret, maybe even desperation. But it was too late for that, wasn't it? He walked towards me, his steps hesitant. "I know you don't want to see me," he said, his voice raw, "but I've been thinking about everything, about you, about us, and I just need you to know. I'm sorry. I don't want to lose you." I felt my breath catch in my throat. There he was, saying the words I had wanted to hear all along, the words I had dreamed about, hoping that one day he'd come to his senses and realize how badly he had hurt me. But now that they were here, they felt hollow, empty. "Why now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why now, after everything? After all the silence, all the comparisons, all the times you let me feel like I wasn't enough?" I don't know," he admitted, his voice trembling. "I was afraid of what would happen if I stood up to my family, afraid of what would happen if I lost them. But I don't want to lose you. I need you to know that I love you, and I should have fought for you from the start. But I was too weak. I was too afraid to lose everything, and I ended up losing you instead." His words hit me like a punch to the gut, and for a moment I felt something crack inside me. There was part of me that wanted to run into his arms, to forgive him, to believe that we could go back to the way things were before the comparisons, before the silence. But there was another part of me, the part that had learned how to stand up for herself, that refused to let him back in without understanding the full weight of what had happened. I looked at him, feeling the tightness in my chest, and I took a deep breath. "I can't just forgive you because you're sorry now. I need more than that. I need to know that you can choose me, that you can defend me when it matters. I can't go back to feeling like I'm second place. I've already done that, and I won't do it again." His face fell, the reality of my words sinking in. "I know. I'm not asking for you to just take me back. I need you to know how much I regret everything. I'll do anything to prove that I want to make this right." I stood there, looking at him, and in that moment, I realized something that had been slowly building inside me. I had already made my choice. I had already walked away once, and I couldn't go back to the person I had been before. I had to keep moving forward, even if it meant letting go of him completely. "Maybe you should talk to your family," I said softly. "Maybe you should start by proving to them that I'm worth defending." He nodded, defeated, and I could see the pain in his eyes. But it wasn't my job to carry that burden for him anymore. And with that, I walked away. I wasn't sure what would come next, but for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. I had finally put myself first, and that was all that mattered. The fallout came swiftly, as it always does when the walls of silence and denial finally come crashing down. I had known it was coming, had prepared myself for it in the months leading up to this point, but no amount of preparation could have softened the blow. It started with his family. I should have expected it, really. They weren't going to let go of their precious image of him without a fight. I should have known that once I walked away, they would come after me, not understanding why I had made the choice I did. Why couldn't I just be with him, despite everything? After all, he was their son, their brother. They hadn't seen the cracks I'd seen, the way his hesitance had torn us apart, the way his love felt more like an obligation than a choice. His mother was the first to call. Her voice was sweet, but laced with frustration. "I know this is hard," she said, her words dripping with forced sympathy. "But you can't just give up on him like this. He's really trying, you know. He's made mistakes, but he's still our son, and we love him." I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her that I wasn't the one who had given up. He was. He was the one who had chosen his family, his comfort zone, over me. But instead, I stayed silent, holding back the tears that had no place in this conversation. "I didn't give up on him," I said quietly, my voice sharp. "I gave up on someone who couldn't choose me, someone who couldn't stand up for me, someone who let me be second to someone else, someone who isn't even in the picture anymore. I'm not going to keep fighting for someone who doesn't fight for me." There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear her breath hitch, and I knew she didn't have anything to say in return. She knew deep down that I was right. The next call came from his father. "You've made a mistake," he said, his voice gruff. "You've broken his heart. He's not the one who messed up. You are. You need to fix this. You need to come back to him." I had expected this too. His father had always been a man who believed in control, in keeping things neat and tidy, in making sure everything stayed in its place. And I was never going to fit neatly into the box he had imagined for his son's life. "I'm not the one who messed up," I said, my tone steady. "I'm not the one who let this go on. I'm not the one who refused to stand up for myself. I've been here, loving him, doing everything I could, but it wasn't enough for him, and now he has to live with that. The conversation ended abruptly. I knew he was disappointed, but in that moment, I realized that his disappointment didn't matter to me anymore. I wasn't here to live up to their expectations. I was here to live for myself. His younger brother texted me next. The message was short, almost too casual. "You've really messed up, you know. She's not coming back, man. You've lost her." I stared at the words for a long time. He hadn't even said my name. To him, I was just her. Just the woman who had been in the way, the woman who wasn't worth defending, the one who had been too much of a hassle for them to deal with. And that's when I knew. I knew they were never going to understand. I knew I would never be the one they accepted, and I was done trying to make them. The hardest blow came when he tried to reach me. For days, I ignored his calls, his texts, his attempts to show up at my apartment. But one afternoon, when I finally answered, I was met with an apology so raw, so desperate, that it took everything in me not to collapse in on myself. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I know I messed up. I don't want to lose you. I've been an idiot. I've been scared. I should have fought for you. I should have stood up to them. I've failed you, and I can't live with that." I felt the weight of his words, but they didn't move me the way they once would have. He was sorry, yes, but it wasn't enough. "You can't just come back into my life and expect everything to be okay," I said, my voice steady, though my heart felt like it was breaking. "You don't get to break me and then expect me to pick up the pieces when it's convenient for you. This isn't about you being sorry. It's about what you didn't do when it mattered. You didn't stand up for me, and that's something I can't forget." He was silent for a long time. I could hear his breathing, ragged and uneven, but I didn't soften. I couldn't. I had spent so long waiting for him to choose me, and now I was choosing myself. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "I'm done. We're done." The line went silent, and for the first time in months, I felt a strange, unfamiliar sense of peace. The decision had been made, and as hard as it was, I knew it was the right one. I blocked his number, and the calls stopped. His family tried to reach out, but I ignored their messages, their attempts at guilt, their pleas for me to come back to him. He had made his choice, and I had made mine. The fallout wasn't just about the end of a relationship. It was the end of a version of myself that I had been holding on to, the version of me that was willing to accept scraps, that was willing to put someone else's needs ahead of her own. It was the end of allowing other people to define my worth, the end of tolerating disrespect. I had walked away from him, from his family, from the past. But what I was walking toward was something I had never given myself permission to have before, my own life. And it was terrifying, it was heartbreaking, but it was mine, and that made all the difference. The months that followed were strange, full of quiet and stillness, but also of growth. It wasn't the smooth, easy journey I had imagined when I first walked away. There were moments of doubt, of missing what I thought could have been, of wondering if I'd made the right decision. But with each passing day, I felt more certain that walking away from him was the best thing I had ever done for myself. I started to rebuild, slowly, in my own way. I leaned into the things that had always been mine, my work, my friends, the things that made me feel alive. I filled my time with things that didn't require apologies or second chances, things that gave me back a sense of purpose. I spent time with the people who truly saw me, who understood the value of setting boundaries, who supported me and never asked me to prove my worth. There were moments when his family tried to intervene. They called, they texted, and once, his mother even showed up at my door, tears in her eyes, apologizing for everything that had happened. She told me that he was miserable, that he missed me, and that I should forgive him. But I didn't. I couldn't. The truth was, forgiveness wasn't just about letting go of the past. It was about acknowledging my own pain and standing firm in the decisions I had made for myself. "You can't undo the past," I told her softly when she stood there pleading with me. "And I can't go back to someone who couldn't choose me when it mattered. He had his chance. Now I'm choosing myself." It was difficult. I had expected the end to feel more like a victory, like a grand triumph over the chaos that had been my life for so long. But instead it was quiet. The silence was what stayed with me the longest, filling the empty spaces and allowing me to breathe for the first time in years. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no grand apology that made everything right. There was just the slow, steady healing that came with reclaiming my own strength. A few months after that, I ran into him at a cafe. I hadn't planned it, didn't expect it, but there he was, standing in line ahead of me, his face instantly recognizable, though it seemed a little more weathered. I felt a flicker of something, sadness, maybe, or closure, but it was fleeting. He didn't see me at first, and I thought about turning away, about avoiding the inevitable confrontation. But as he turned to leave, our eyes met. For a moment, there was that familiar jolt, that rush of emotions. The old me wanted to reach out, wanted to ask him how he was, wanted to fill the space between us with words of comfort, to make him feel better. But I stayed silent. "Hey," I said, my voice calm, the way it was now, with no bitterness, no anger, just a neutral acknowledgement of what had been. "Hey," he replied, his voice quieter than I expected. He didn't seem angry, didn't seem upset, just weary. "How have you been?" "Good," I said, offering a small smile. "Better, actually. I've been taking care of myself." He nodded, as if processing the fact that I wasn't the same person he had known. The silence stretched out between us, heavy but not uncomfortable. And then, as if he couldn't keep it inside anymore, he said the words that I had never expected to hear. "I've been working on myself," he admitted, his voice soft but sincere. "I've been going to therapy. I've been trying to figure out where I went wrong. I think I get it now. I think I understand what I lost." I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to say anything. The words I had waited so long to hear weren't necessary anymore. I had already let go. I had already moved on. "I'm glad to hear that," I said simply. "I really am. I hope you figure it out." And that was it. The end of the story. There were no tears, no big dramatic moments, just two people who had once meant everything to each other, now standing in the quiet of their own separate lives. We exchanged a few more pleasantries, but there was no need to linger. He had his own journey to make, and I had mine. As I walked away, the feeling of finality settled over me like a warm blanket. The past was behind me, and though it had shaped me, it didn't define me anymore. The lessons I had learned, the strength I had found, had been hard-won, but they were mine now. The lesson I learned, perhaps the most important one, was this: never settle for being second place in anyone's life. You deserve to be someone's first choice, someone's priority. And when someone can't choose you, it's not your fault. It's theirs. And it's okay to walk away from that. I had given everything I had to that relationship, but I didn't need to keep giving. I was worthy of love, of respect, and of someone who saw me as their equal. And once I realized that, I found peace. It wasn't easy. It wasn't instant, but it was real, and it was mine. As for him, I truly hoped he found what he was looking for. I hoped he healed, that he learned from his mistakes. But I wasn't going to wait around for him to do that. I was living my own life now, on my own terms. And I was okay with that.